For as long as I can remember, my life felt predictable, comfortable, anchored in faith and service. My name is Maria, and I believed that kindness, honesty, and devotion were more than virtues, they were shields. I poured myself into my community, organizing school fundraisers, volunteering at the church, and being the steady hand my neighbors could rely on. Home was my sanctuary, my marriage a partnership built on love, respect, and shared dreams. I thought I knew the people closest to me, especially the man I had trusted with my heart. That Tuesday afternoon started like any other, the ordinary rhythm of life settling around me. David, my husband, was on a phone call in his study, a room that once held laughter and late-night conversations. The door was slightly open, and a fragment of words slipped out, words that would pierce my world like a blade. "I'm getting my divorce plan ready to really screw her over," he said. The tone was casual, almost gleeful, but the venom in it froze me in place. "I'll turn everyone against her, make her look unstable. Take full custody, walk away from any financial responsibility." I couldn't breathe. The man I had shared my life with, the one I trusted implicitly, was speaking of destroying me. It wasn't just betrayal, it was deliberate, meticulous, and cold-blooded. Every laugh we had shared, every quiet night together, suddenly felt like a fragile illusion. My soul recoiled not only in hurt but in disbelief. I had trusted, I had believed, and now the very foundations of that trust were crumbling before my eyes. For a long moment, I simply listened, anchored in shock. The sadness that enveloped me wasn't just for my own loss, it was for the man I thought I knew, whose presence had been a constant in my life. But beneath that sorrow stirred something sharper: awareness. The gift of discernment I had relied on in prayer, often subtle and quiet, screamed its warning now with absolute clarity. This wasn't a fleeting lapse or a misunderstanding. This was war, and I had been blindsided. My first instinct was disbelief, then anger, then an almost terrifying clarity. I realized that my world, once stable and predictable, was tilting dangerously, and there was no returning to the naive trust I had once carried. From that moment, everything changed. I was no longer just a wife, a mother, a neighbor. I was a woman who had glimpsed the shadow of true malice, forced to navigate it before it could engulf me. The life I had built, my sense of safety, my faith in human goodness, it was all on the line. The whisper had been quiet, almost casual, yet it carried a storm. And I knew then, with bone-deep certainty, that nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. After that chilling whisper, our home became a place of tension I could feel in the walls. The ordinary rhythms of life continued, yet everything felt different, distorted, almost unreal. My mind, normally busy with planning, teaching, and volunteering, became a silent observer, hyper-alert to the smallest shifts. I didn't confront David. I didn't yell. I simply watched, quietly, like a shadow gliding through familiar rooms now tinged with suspicion. At first, the changes were subtle. David's phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, was now constantly in his hand, always face down. Calls went to other rooms. Passcodes appeared suddenly, locking away secrets that had previously been shared freely. His gaze, once warm and open, now flickered away, distracted, wary. Conversation became measured, short and vague, laced with pauses that felt deliberate. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe he's under stress. Maybe he's just busy. Maybe I'm imagining things. But instinct, sharpened by that earlier betrayal, whispered a harsher truth. I was seeing patterns, small and insidious, that pointed to something deeper. This wasn't about work stress or personal space. It was about preparation, control, and a plan unfolding under my nose. The late nights at the office grew longer. Weekends became oddly unaccounted for. Every vague excuse, every hidden glance, felt like a brick in the wall David was quietly building. It was exhausting, disorienting, and yet strangely clarifying. I realized that I could no longer assume the best. I had to watch for the worst. I began to notice the almost imperceptible things: a hurried deletion of emails, a sudden interest in joint financial documents, a hesitant word when I asked routine questions. Every small act, once meaningless, now screamed warning signs. The storm wasn't coming, it was already forming, invisible yet imminent. The emotional toll was heavy. Fear, anger, and disbelief swirled beneath the surface, but outwardly, I maintained calm. I moved with purpose, careful not to reveal that I had overheard the truth. My silence became my shield, my composure a quiet weapon. I observed, catalogued, and slowly began to understand the magnitude of what I was facing. This period of quiet tension, this fog before the storm, was the crucible in which my resolve hardened. The Maria who trusted blindly was gone, replaced by a version of myself alert, cautious, and unwilling to be blindsided again. Every instinct, every prayer, every moment of reflection sharpened me for what was coming. I realized that survival depended not on confrontation or anger, but on awareness, strategy, and patience. By the time David's intentions became undeniable, I had already begun preparing, quietly, invisibly. I would not be caught off guard. I would not be unarmed. The storm might come, but I would meet it, not with panic, but with quiet, deliberate strength. The fog of suspicion had thickened into a tense awareness, but the true test came quietly, at our kitchen table one seemingly ordinary evening. David's voice, smooth and calm, carried an almost paternal tone as he spoke, a dangerous veneer over the storm beneath. "Maria," he said, leaning slightly forward, "I've been thinking about our future, our finances. It just makes sense to organize everything, to have a clear picture of all accounts, documents, and investments. For emergencies, for taxes, just so we're prepared." On the surface, his words seemed reasonable, even responsible. But my heart sank. The whisper from weeks before, the casual declaration of ruin, resurfaced with full force. This wasn't about prudence. This was strategy. The predator was revealing his plan, thinking I would remain blind. I kept my expression neutral, my voice calm. "That sounds sensible. How do you suggest we start?" David smiled, a glimmer of predatory satisfaction lurking behind the practiced ease. "We can consolidate accounts, gather statements, deeds, even personal accounts. Just so everything is in one place." Every word confirmed my worst suspicions. This wasn't consolidation, it was control. He wanted access to my financial life under the guise of planning for our future. His aim was clear: map everything before executing the scheme he had boasted about. Inside, a cold dread spread, but outwardly, I remained composed. After he left the room, believing his plan was advancing smoothly, I acted. Quietly, deliberately, I logged into our accounts. My fingers trembled slightly, but my resolve was firm. Small transfers, subtle and almost imperceptible, confirmed the pattern. He had been siphoning funds, setting the stage for the moment he intended to strike. I took screenshots of every transaction, noting dates, amounts, and irregularities. Each image became a piece of armor, a shield against the betrayal that had invaded my life. My next step was measured. I contacted Sarah, a lawyer and friend I trusted implicitly. "Sarah," I said, voice steady, "I need guidance. This isn't about divorce, yet. But I need to know my rights and how to protect myself." I recounted the whispered plan, the subtle shifts in behavior, and the financial maneuver. Sarah's response was precise and empowering. "Document everything. Move only what you can secure safely. Do not sign anything without review. You are ahead if you act carefully and quietly." By nightfall, I had gathered documents, birth certificates, property deeds, insurance papers, securing originals and making copies. I reached out to my mother, asking her to safeguard personal items and heirlooms. Trusting her completely, she complied without question. The Maria who assumed goodwill and naivety was gone. In her place was a woman sharpened by betrayal, fueled by strategy and quiet preparation. The first move in this war had been made, but it wasn't David who would dictate the terms. I would. And I would move in silence, armed with foresight, faith, and an unwavering resolve to protect everything that mattered. The moment David proposed his financial consolidation, the last traces of hope I had clung to evaporated. The fog of suspicion lifted, replaced by a stark, unflinching clarity. I was facing more than a divorce, I was facing a meticulously orchestrated attempt to dismantle my life. But I refused to react with panic or anger. My response would be calculated, deliberate, silent, a quiet strategy in the shadows. That evening, after David retreated to his study, satisfied with what he believed was his clever maneuver, I began my work. I reviewed the accounts, noting every irregular transfer, every subtle shift in funds. Each transaction, once seemingly insignificant, now told a story of deliberate malice. My hands, steady despite the racing pulse in my chest, recorded every detail. Screenshots, dates, balances, they became weapons in an invisible arsenal, shields against betrayal. Next came legal counsel. I called Sarah, my friend and trusted lawyer. "Sarah, I need to protect myself preemptively," I said. "David's behavior isn't just suspicious, it's strategic. I need guidance." Her voice was calm but firm. "Document everything, Maria. Don't sign a thing. Move what you can secure, quietly. Preparation now is your strongest ally." With her guidance, I began a silent extraction of crucial documents, birth certificates, property deeds, marriage papers, insurance policies. Originals were secured in a safe deposit box, copies carefully catalogued. I called my mother, entrusting her with family heirlooms and personal items. No questions asked, just unwavering support. Every step was deliberate, every move was calculated. I wasn't preparing to retaliate impulsively, I was preparing to protect, to ensure that when the inevitable confrontation came, I would stand unshaken, fortified with proof, foresight, and clarity. This was a war fought in quiet rooms, behind locked doors, with patience as my weapon. I also began observing David with renewed intensity. Each conversation, each excuse, each fleeting glance was data, another piece of the puzzle. He thought he was the strategist, but his arrogance blinded him to my own careful orchestration. While he believed he was gaining ground, I was laying the foundation for a counterstrike rooted in patience, wisdom, and undeniable truth. Faith, too, became my companion. Long hours in prayer and reflection reminded me that strength often comes quietly. I wasn't seeking vengeance, I was seeking equilibrium, the restoration of order and peace. Like the serpent and the dove, I moved with caution, blending harmless appearance with sharp awareness. By the time the first legal papers would arrive, I would not be caught off guard. My silence was not weakness, it was power. My meticulous preparation, the documentation, the secure storage of vital evidence, and the counsel of a trusted advisor had shifted the balance. The Maria who trusted blindly had vanished. In her place stood a woman who saw clearly, acted decisively, and understood that survival and integrity demanded careful strategy over emotional reaction. The storm had not yet broken, but when it did, I would be ready. And I would not just survive, I would ensure that truth, not deception, prevailed. The tension in our home had grown thick, unspoken yet palpable, as though the air itself held its breath. Then, one evening, David delivered the words I had anticipated, rehearsed countless times in my mind. His face wore the mask of solemnity, his voice lined with a rehearsed sadness. "Maria," he began, avoiding my gaze, "we need to talk. I've been thinking. I've lost myself in this marriage. I need space. We both deserve better." The words, meant to wound and unsettle, fell flat. My expression remained neutral, my heart a fortress behind a calm exterior. He painted himself as the victim, as if I were the one who had failed. His story was crafted for sympathy, for me to react, for him to regain control. But I had learned to move differently, to respond with silence rather than fear. By Monday morning, the envelope arrived. Thick, official, and impersonal, it outlined his demands: half the house, half the savings, investments, car, and spousal support. Every item reflected the malicious plan he had whispered about weeks earlier. He expected panic, tears, compliance. He expected to see me weakened. But I did not falter. I called Sarah immediately. "They've arrived," I said, calm and measured. "And I'm ready." The mediation was set, and David walked into the room radiating confidence. He expected an easy victory, a house of cards I would crumble beneath. He hadn't accounted for the quiet, patient work I had done in the shadows. Sarah began. "My client, Maria, has evidence we'd like to present before we proceed." She pushed a folder across the table. Inside were meticulously documented screenshots, transaction histories, and financial records showing that David's transfers and account manipulations had been deliberate, premeditated, and ongoing for months. Every move he had made under the guise of organization was now exposed, time-stamped, undeniable. David's smug confidence faltered, his jaw clenched, lips pressed tight. "You planned this," he hissed, fury barely contained. "You set me up." I met his gaze steadily, my voice calm, unwavering. "The only thing I regret, David," I said, "is trusting you." The silence that followed was deafening. The rustle of papers filled the room as his lawyer scrambled to understand the full scope of the evidence. David's carefully constructed narrative, his manipulative smirk, his assumption of control, they all crumbled under the weight of truth. No shouting, no spectacle, just quiet, undeniable proof. For the first time in weeks, I felt the heavy burden lift. The tension that had gripped my chest for so long began to ease, replaced by a sense of clarity, power, and justice. The storm had come, but I had met it with strategy, patience, and integrity. In that moment, I realized something profound. The greatest victories are not loud, they are deliberate, precise, and rooted in preparation. David's deception, exposed and powerless, was now a testament not to my cunning, but to the strength of foresight, patience, and unwavering character. The tables had turned. The balance of power, once in his hands, was now fully in mine. And the truth, in all its quiet, undeniable clarity, set me free. After the mediation, the quiet of victory was deceptive. David's calls and voicemails began almost immediately, frantic, pleading, desperate attempts to reclaim control. He tried to explain, to justify, to twist the narrative, painting himself as the wronged party and me as manipulative. Each message was a reminder of the storm he had intended, but his fury was now powerless against the evidence I had gathered. When his legal maneuver failed, he turned to another weapon, a smear campaign. Subtle at first, whispers to friends, casual insinuations about my unstable behavior, erratic temperament. His goal was clear: he wanted to undo the truth by spreading doubt, to erode my credibility the same way he had tried to erase my finances. But stories built on half-truths collapse when faced with a lifetime of consistency. The people who mattered knew me. They had seen my life of service, my integrity, my unwavering faith and generosity. His words rang hollow against decades of genuine character. Concerned friends reached out. Texts, calls, notes of uncertainty and loyalty. "Maria, is everything okay?" they asked, sensing the tension. Then, the final piece fell into place. Tom, a trusted mutual friend, contacted me privately. "Maria, you need to see this," he said, sending screenshots from David's laptop, messages between him and a woman named Trisha. The exchanges were explicit. Instructions to hide assets, manipulate settlements, and ensure I received nothing. The scheme was larger than I had imagined, a coordinated plan with an accomplice to defraud me completely. I shared these messages with only those who truly mattered: my pastor, my mentor, school officials, and a few friends I could trust. Not publicly, not recklessly, only with those whose judgment and support mattered most. I didn't need to explain. The messages spoke for themselves. David's narrative of deceit collapsed immediately under the undeniable proof of his own malice. Within days, his lawyer's tone changed entirely. The demands for spousal support disappeared. Claims on my personal assets vanished. The consolidation scheme, the supposed clever plan to steal from me, was fully exposed. Trisha, the accomplice, disappeared from the picture entirely. David's desperate attempts to salvage influence and reputation were futile. I didn't respond to his calls or messages. His words, frantic apologies, empty pleas, were now irrelevant. The final blow was not a confrontation, not a spectacle of revenge. It was quiet, dignified, and absolute. I had documented, secured, and revealed the truth. The integrity that had guided me through the storm now stood unshaken, impervious to manipulation. In the aftermath, I realized the power of measured action and calm strategy. I had acted not from anger, but from foresight, discipline, and patience. The storm had broken, yes, but I had not only weathered it, I had mastered it. David's attempts at deception, control, and destruction had failed because I had moved silently, deliberately, and wisely. Sometimes, the loudest victories are the quietest ones. In exposing the scheme without drama, without reckless retaliation, I had preserved not only my assets but my integrity, my peace, and my life. The storm had ended, the truth had spoken, and I had emerged whole. When the dust finally settled, it was quiet, not with fireworks, not with vindictive confrontation, but with the gentle hum of a life reclaimed. The divorce was finalized swiftly, decisively, and fairly. David received only what the law deemed his, stripped of the ill-gotten advantages he had schemed to acquire. His reputation, once carefully crafted, lay in ruins. The manipulation and deceit he had relied upon were now exposed, leaving only a man who had lost both his integrity and his influence. For me, victory was not about revenge, it was about peace. Peace in knowing I had acted with strategy, foresight, and integrity. Peace in knowing that my children, protected from the worst of the conflict, felt safe and loved, their emotional landscape shielded from the treachery I had faced. I had not needed to fight loudly, to attack verbally, or to indulge in anger. My preparation, patience, and meticulous strategy had done the work for me. My network, the people I had poured into for years, became my fortress. The pastor, school officials, friends, and neighbors who had seen my life of consistent kindness and service provided testimony that no accusation could overcome. David's attempts to paint me as unstable fell flat against a lifetime of authentic, observable character. The truth, steady and undeniable, had spread faster and stronger than any lies could travel. I emerged transformed, not just relieved but profoundly wiser. I learned, in the crucible of betrayal and challenge, that character is not just a personal virtue, it is currency. What we consistently demonstrate through our actions matters far more than the words we speak. When the storm arrives, the network of trust built on genuine relationships becomes an armor no deception can penetrate. I also learned the power of discernment and strategic patience. In a world where betrayal can strike suddenly, quiet vigilance and careful preparation are far more powerful than emotional reaction. Acting with calm, deliberate precision ensures that truth and justice prevail without unnecessary spectacle or drama. Silence, I discovered, is often more potent than any shout, integrity, more valuable than any fleeting revenge. Through this experience, I realized that the greatest triumphs come not from dominating others, but from standing firm in your truth, protecting what matters, and allowing the consequences of honesty and careful planning to speak for themselves. Life had tested me in the harshest way possible, but it had also illuminated the path to resilience, wisdom, and inner strength. As I rebuild, surrounded by love, faith, and the unwavering support of those who truly know me, I carry a profound understanding. Storms will come, deceit will strike, and people may try to take what is yours. But a life lived with integrity, foresight, and unwavering resolve cannot be shaken. My story became more than survival, it became a testament to the enduring power of truth, character, and the quiet strength of a prepared heart. The storm had passed. I had not only survived, I had emerged whole, stronger, and wiser. And in that, I found my peace.